It's awesome to have you guys here. Welcome, Pastor Chris.
Good to be here, Pastor Jeff.
That's
Glad
right.
to be with you.
Hey, we wanted to try something new tonight and just come to you and do a live Facebook 4 stages of navigating crisis. I came across this from Jesse Cruz. Let me see. I want to give her Cruikshank, Jesse Cruikshank. She put together this incredible material that I thought, goodness, we both went through and found it to be incredibly helpful, insightful. No matter where you are in life, we're all going through this crisis, so we're all navigating. You don't have to believe in Jesus to even, understand that we're all going to experience this crisis together. And so we thought it'd be helpful for anybody at all. Of course, we're going to put in Scripture and the heart of God in all this, but this is going to be really helpful to understand these 4 stages. And so thanks for joining us. So for you at home, wherever you're at, would you just share it to anybody who you think, man, this could be really helpful because this is going to be great material.
Yeah, get on the phone, call them right now and say, hey, go, check on, log into Facebook. Yep. They can watch it and wherever they are. So,
and we're also on YouTube, so Life Church Chico. So whatever works, text somebody, send them a message, call them up and say, hey, check in on this because it's going to be really, really helpful. So share the love by sharing the link is what we've been saying.
That's right. I love that. That's great.
It really is. You're going to share the love because it's going to help those you love. So yeah, like I said, Jesse put this together. I was so grateful that Foursquare, our denomination, was able to connect. She's a pastor in Foursquare, and she just has gone through this and done a lot of research and study on what people go through. In fact, she would take people out in the wilderness for these 30 to 60-day wilderness discipleship journeys. And she did a study on everybody who went out, and she said, everybody experiences these 4 stages, and it has to do with isolation. It has to do with being alone. It has to do with all of these things. So it's good stuff.
Right. Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, because in that sense, too, when you get pushed to the limit in these days that we're all getting pushed to the limit, Pastor Jeff and I just felt like this is great information to help you guys get through this.
And what we're noticing too is, and don't worry, we're going to get through this, and we're going to try and stick to about an hour or so. But we really want this to be participatory. We're realizing that you're probably getting sick and tired of just being a watcher, like how many Zoom meetings can I be a part of? We definitely saw this uptick of everybody jumping in and being part of Zooms and still continuing the connection. And it was uprise, and then all of a sudden, it just, this last week and a half or so, has really crashed, and that's part of these 4 stages. So you're going to see that. So we thought we would want to make it interactive, a live thing. Like this isn't scripted. We've got our notes, but this is what we love to do.
Yeah,
this is just really fun. It's who we are. It's who we are as a church. And just want you to know, if you don't have a church home, you can come to Life Church online now. It doesn't matter where you are.
That's
it's incredible. So the way we want to do this is we're going to go through these 4 stages, and we want you to be able to send in your questions. So there's a couple of ways you can do that. Number one, you can just, on the Facebook Live chat, just write out your question. Simple as that. Some of you don't mind doing that. Others are like, I'm not putting a question up so everybody can see that I'm asking that question. Okay, I get it. You introverts.
Right,
is that what that is?
We want to stay anonymous.
All right. So here's another way you can do it. We've got a Google number. It's going to come straight to my phone. I won't know who it is. So you'll stay anonymous and send me a question. If you send it to us, the number is on the screen, hopefully, but 487-4330. If you're out of the area, you need to make sure you put 530 on there. But for those who are in Chico, Butte County area, 487-4330. And send in your questions. Jessica, our incredible administrator, she's filtering through them. She's going to be uploading them for us. And so we'll read them at the end of what we're doing. So we'll present the 4 stages. We'll take your questions. We'll dialogue about them and hopefully give some perspective. And if we don't know, that's kind of been my phrase lately is, I don't know. I don't know what's next. I don't know how we're doing this. I'm not sure. I don't know. But we go day to day. That's what I think we know. We're going day to day, just like you guys, and we're doing our best to bring Jesus to the situation and invite him in, and it's challenging and it's hard. So let's dialogue together. Just throw your questions out there, text it, Or, I mean, private message our Life Church Chico Facebook. You know, you can do that. You can private message us. We'll get those questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. So hopefully we'll have enough time, and we'll go from there. So,
Right. Let's do it.
All right. So here's the deal. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. I wish you were here because I would just have so much more fun.
You guys don't realize how difficult it is for Pastor Jeff not to have people in the room.
Yeah, I got to have, I'm looking at you. I'm in your home. So here's the deal. 4 stages of crisis, of navigating the crisis. And the very first one is building. Building. Then the second one is breaking. The third one is baptism. And for some of you, you might be going like, baptism? What baptism? I thought that was something you did either when you were a baby, you got sprinkled, or you've been in church and you get baptized. Another way to say that, just for you right now, is surrender. It's letting the Lord do His work. Okay, we'll get to that. And then the fourth one, probably my favorite, is the budding. We see the light at the end of the tunnel. Oh, we get to start dreaming and having a lot of hope. So no matter what, you'll see the days and the phases where these line up with us, but we've been in this for 30, 40 days at least.
And more than that, I think we're into 5th, 6th week.
Yeah. So you're gonna notice you're gonna notice when I talk about building, you're gonna notice what you did, and you're gonna go, oh yeah, I did that too. Okay, good, you did that. That's a big spike of adrenaline, and then you get into this breaking point, and that's what I'm going to give Pastor Chris the hard stuff to talk about, and then we'll go from there. So building, breaking, baptism, and then budding, and those are navigating those 4 stages. You got to understand, it really appears and feels like everybody experiences these. So if you're tuning in and you're really paying attention to where you're at emotionally, spiritually, you're going to navigate. You're going to really hear these things and go, oh man. When I heard this, I just went through my breaking point, and I went, oh, that's it. It gave me so much clarity of like, right. Oh, that's why I just had this. Whoa. And I'm sure you guys experience that in different ways, and we'll talk about that as we go. So another way I like to describe this is seasonally. We have 4 seasons. We have summer. That would be the building phase. You have breaking, which would be the fall phase where leaves start falling. It gets darker. It gets a little colder. Then you have baptism phase, which is winter. Everything goes away. It's the worst season, in my opinion.
Yeah, some people like it.
Rain, come on. Give me the heat. Give me the summer. And then you got budding, which is spring. And so that might be a helpful way for you to think through this as well. So if you're taking notes, just, building is summer, breaking is fall, baptism is winter, and then budding is spring. So here we go. Are we ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do this. So the building phase. Let's talk about the building stage. The building stage is adrenaline-filled stage, and I hope you see this on our notes. It's expending loads of energy, okay, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. What we've recently experienced in Butte County with the campfire, I was really grateful that we got hold of what happens in crisis and natural disasters and tragedy is usually you have this 18-month period. The very first month is just this huge adrenaline rush where, if you remember, everybody's like, what can I do? How can we help? We'll do anything. You're donating things, you're giving things, you're giving of yourself, you're volunteering, you just have this adrenaline, right? Well, in this building phase, this is what we did, right? We automatically went to, what do we need to do? How do we need to figure this out? How do I stay at home? How do I stay at home with my kids? How do I work? How do I stay at home with my kids and doing school and work? You're like, you built your structures. And so.
Right. Well, that's where the adrenaline kicks in.
Yeah.
It's a survival mode. There's a crisis upon us, and most everybody accelerated in their energy levels at that point.
Right. So you see your schedule. My schedule with our 4 kids at home and trying to run the church, and oh my goodness, most pastors, this is a pastor's thing, most pastors thought they'd be working a lot less.
Yeah.
Not even close. No. So schedules, you're talking daily and weekly. I think I said that earlier, but there's no way. There's so many unknowns. You can't plan out a month ahead. You can't plan out 2 months ahead or 3 months ahead. And we've had to cancel a lot of things. In fact, this weekend, today, we were supposed to be going to men's camp.
Oh, that's right.
It's
Isn't that
it's just
something? We
wild,
became so hyper-focused
Yeah.
on getting through this that there were so many other things in our schedule that just got
Yeah.
bumped off.
So you have your schedule, and that's where you kind of started honing out. Carissa and I, my wife and I, with our kids in school, we didn't really hone into our schedule until probably the second or third week, where our kids got their schedules, and we kind of figured out, okay, here's our daily routine, here's our weekly routine. So that's the building part. Then you had to build your communication structure. How are you communicating with your loved ones? How are you communicating with people that you can't be with? So of course you have email and texting was probably the most general ones, phone calls. But then you started introducing what? Zoom, 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 Zoom. In fact, we both have Zoom rooms at our houses because we just do Zoom all day, every day. And so you figured that stuff out. You maybe introduced to Marco Polo, which, man, if you got Marco Polo, find me. I'd love to Marco Polo with you. I love Marco Polo. It's my
great
jam
app.
because I don't love the phone. I'll call if I need to, of course, but I really like it because you see them. It's quick, it's short, it's easy, and it's better than a text message. So we do Marco Polo all the time.
All the time.
And it works great.
Yeah. I like it because you can just do it on the fly. You just push start and you record it and push send. There's no having to look up a phone number or look up an email
Yeah,
address.
super easy. Okay, so you have your schedule, you have your communication, now you have your network, right? Your work from home. Majority of people do that unless you're essential. Of course, you're going into the hospital, or you're police, or you're doing something else that's essential in town. That's fantastic. And by the way, thank you to all of you who've been doing that. So you got to figure out work at home. That's a huge stress. But again, your adrenaline right at this point, your adrenaline overrides the stress. It just goes, I'm going to dominate you. I'm going to force you into submission. And I'm going to plant you away. I'm going to put you away for now, and we're just going to make it, right? So work from home, school from home, church from home. So those churchgoers, Life Church family, man, oh man, whoo. You figure out how to do that. And every church is doing a great job at that, and we're doing our best to figure that out. And in some ways it's cool, but in others, man, it's just we're missing that community connection for sure.
The face-to-face experience.
And then you got to figure out community at home. How do you hang out with friends? How do you hang out with family even? And so a lot of people I know have just done family porch gatherings, where you're staying away from each other, you're with your family, and you just connect that way, and you stay away from each other, but you're still at least talking to each other. So there's those things. There's also, in this building phase, there's the gathering phase. What I would like to call this is hoarding all the toilet paper. Come on, man. Come on. I've been to Costco quite a few times. Just finally today, I went and there was toilet paper. So I'm sure they sold out already, but I went, oh, look at that. Finally. Or Lysol wipes too. It was kind of interesting. So you're gathering resources. And then finally, just to close this out, is kind of maybe one of the most important things. You may or may not have realized this, but it automatically reprioritizes your values. The things that you thought were really important and really of great value and really serious about, you went, oh, you know what? That's not as big of a deal as maybe we had intended or thought of. And so you go, man, what's most important to me is, of course, family and my relationship with the Lord and work. And how do I navigate that? You kind of had to restructure and really only hone in on these things. And now that we're several weeks in, you've probably added in and kind of balanced that out a little bit more. But that's the building stage. And the scripture that we have that we've thought about is a classic one from Matthew, where Jesus says this. He says, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine, okay, who listen to Jesus and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on a rock. And so I want to encourage you that ideally, we're doing everything for the Lord, and we're letting Him lead us in these places. However, when we're working so hard and so quickly building, that can often be a side note and a come on, hurry up, Jesus! And we want to make sure that we really invite Him to lead, even in these especially in these stressful moments. I mean, It's got to be really one of those values that we hold,
Well, I think what's most exhausting about it is that you're putting out a lot of energy, and it's sudden. This thing grabbed us, and before you knew it, we had to. We went into survival mode, which is why you go through the gathering process, why people were, pulling toilet paper and Lysol wipes off the shelf, is because that survival, I have to take care of myself, I have to take care of my family. You expend a lot of energy, and there's that adrenaline rush. But we all know that once that depletes, you can just hit, and when you hit hard,
Yeah.
because you're exhausted.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that.
Yeah.
That's the next stage. And so my question is if that's what Jesus says, then how are we building, and who are we building on? And I want to encourage you that Jesus is the rock. He's our firm foundation. And so when he's at my right hand, I won't be shaken. That's what Psalm says. I love that verse in Psalm 16. We want to have this presence about us. So if you're still shaking through this, I want to encourage you to invite the Lord to be part of it. And you can always go back and look at your structure, look at your foundation, and go, ooh, maybe I want to invite Jesus in on this part of our life. So.
Right. Yeah, that was a great point. Pastor Jeff pointed that out to me today, is that in the urgency of the moment, we do what seems the right thing to do. But any of us could miss a major key task, which is to make sure you're building everything on the rock, building everything on Christ's principles, on the Word. And so it's not too late. You can still go back and say, wow, I emphasized too much on this or too much on that, which made sense at the time. But if you've been lacking in developing that firm foundation with Christ, you can go back and do that.
Yeah. It says, Jesus goes on, he says, the rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall. And I just want to encourage you, if you're kind of shaking your faith, or maybe you just are like, yeah, I kind of left that long ago, or whatever, I want to encourage you to maybe say a prayer like, Lord, I want you part of my life, and would you lead me and reveal to me yourself and who you are, and goodness, we would love to help with that too. So that's a whole nother part right now, but just want to encourage you with that. So let's go into, by the way, the building phase is 0 days to 14 days. So obviously we're well past that, but at the same time, it's like you kind of see these kind of like gray into each other.
Right.
So my phrase has been, we get better each week.
Right.
So I'm a continual builder anyway. So that's just the way my mindset works. So I'm continually thinking, how do we get better? How do we connect with the Lord more, and all those things? But so that's the first 2 weeks. And now we're going to get to the breaking stage, which Pastor Chris will talk about, is 14 to 28 days. And this is where I want to keep your eyes out, keep your ears out, because I think you're going to identify maybe where you've had a breaking moment, and if it's coming or if you're feeling that. So
when we hit that place of rock bottom, I think a lot of times it surprises us because it's gradual. It's all of a sudden you find yourself melting down, as we say. You find yourself acting in such a way that you wouldn't normally act, whether there's anger or you're lashing out, or like I said, you're just flat out exhausted. Well, that's the second phase that happens when you're in a prolonged situation. Initially, adrenaline holds you up, but when you run out, you enter this other phase, which is you just become exhausted. But there are some real enemies that creep in that can even make that breaking time even worse, which are fear and anxiety. And Pastor Jeff have been really trying to talk about that a lot, to help people adjust to what is this sudden feeling of fear.
Yeah, and just really quick, it doesn't matter how old you are.
No.
So please, parents, listen. Parents, ears up. This is for your kids too. And I know, most you guys are paying attention to your kids, but fear, what Pastor Chris is going to talk about, this can occur into our kids too. And so
Right.
How do we,
Yeah, so observe that. I found it interesting. It struck me today. I know that Jesus said quite often in the Gospels, don't be afraid or fear not. And so I started to research how many times the Bible tells us to not be afraid. And there are literally 70 scriptures that use that phrase, but there's actually hundreds of phrases that talk about not being afraid or not letting fear overwhelm you. But it was a phrase that Jesus used quite a bit. Don't be afraid, fear not. And we really want to say that to you tonight. Don't be afraid. Don't let fear get you, because that feeling is overwhelming and it can swallow you. And the way that Julie talked about in this these different phrases, she always gave a positive way to respond to the negative things that were happening. Yeah. And so when you're feeling fear and anxiety, the best way to respond to it in a healthy way, and she used an acronym of OSV. And so when you feel that, and if you're feeling right now, the thing is that we feel disoriented, so it's a time to reorient or orient ourselves. And what we mean by that is that you check in with your friends, you check in with your family, you check in with people who are very close to you, and you talk about your situation. It's a time for vulnerability, which is difficult for us. A lot of times we don't like to ask for help. But if you're going to get through this breaking time, folks, you need to be vulnerable.
And I would say open and clear communication.
Right.
It's just, hey, I'm having a rough day.
Right.
Or, hey, Marco Polo, man, this day stinks. Can you please pray for me? Something that you would be vulnerable. And vulnerability, we've talked about this several times, but it really, when we're vulnerable, when I'm vulnerable with Pastor Chris, you're gonna therefore be more vulnerable with me.
Right.
Therefore, we go deeper in our relationship.
Right.
And so be vulnerable not only with others, but also the Lord, I think, as well.
Right, and that helps to orient us when we do that. The other thing is support. Now, you know that Pastor Jeff and I are really big on small groups, and we've tried to keep our life groups alive during this COVID crisis, and we've used Zoom. Yep. And, the groups are doing well, the ones that have been able to continue to meet. But that's what I mean by support. You need to have not only people that you can check in with, but you need a group orientation that you can bare your soul, you can open up your heart, and that's where things like that take place.
Yeah. And on the flip side, you also can be a support. So you might be doing relatively well that day. So that's not a time to check out. It'd be a time to check in and be like, hey, I can bring something to the table. And I think actually, in fact, when we come not able to give anything and we say, I got nothing, that's when you're actually bringing something, because it says to your group or your community or your life group, whatever, says, okay, we're here for you.
Right.
We carry one another's burdens.
Yeah.
And we care for one another through it.
So the question that we would have for you right now is, who is your support team? I mean, that's something for you to think about. Really, can you write down, say, this is my support team? Am I supported? And then the last one has to do with feeling like you're valued. We need to have some sense of feeling that we're accomplishing something productive, we're making a difference in someone's life. The best way to deal with I'm hopeless is to turn around and be used by God to do something for someone else. So how can you do that? Again, a question we ask you, which is, in what ways can you take what energy, time, resources that you have and be productive in that, be making a difference in somebody else's life? And that's where you have to think outside of the box sometimes.
Yeah, and part of it too is don't avoid the breaking. I've been thinking about the caterpillar. In fact, we've been going on lots of bike rides, right? Me and the kids and Carissa, we're out on our bikes all the time now. And right now is when all the caterpillars are out in Upper Park and Lower Park. And so we're literally riding our bikes and, oh, caterpillar, watch out. They're just trying to crawl to their next leaf. But the process that they go through, there has to be a breaking within the cocoon. So by the way, you're in your home, you're in your cocoon, you're in your safe place, you're there, and there's got to be a breaking that in order for transformation to occur, that the Lord wants to bring and do with you. So don't avoid it. If the caterpillar avoided it, he'd never turn into the beautiful butterfly. We also get to see those beautiful, amazing butterflies that are. I love that process. And by the way, I would kind of nerded out on it this morning. Like, I want to know more about the caterpillar. Like, I want to go back to kindergarten and learn all about it. But what I found again is it takes about 40 to 50 days from the time a caterpillar is born to when it becomes a butterfly. That's pretty much the season we're in. By the way, 40, the number 40 in Scripture, Noah was on the ark for 40 days,
Right.
or reigned for 40 days and 40 nights. The Israelites were in the desert for 40 years. Talk about a breaking. Whew,
Yeah.
40 years. We have no room to complain, man. 40 years. And then Jesus was in the desert for 40 years before he began his ministry, okay? There was a breaking. And it's like, oh gosh, Pastor Jeff, really? Like, do we have to? Yeah, I want to build, instead of breaking in baptism, I want to build a bridge
Right.
from the building to the budding, right? But I also want to be bold enough to allow the Lord to do this breaking of things, the values that I thought were values, which aren't, the bad habits, the focus on the Lord and not the Lord. Like, these are moments where you can really allow
Right.
the Lord to really do work.
There can be something very redemptive in going through a very, very difficult time, like for the caterpillar turning into a butterfly. But for many people that we've talked to, they have been transformed by this breaking. They are finding themselves becoming something they never knew that they could become before, but it hurts a lot. And the sad thing is that sometimes that breaking can lead to this baptism for longer than we'd like. But, like I said, in that vulnerability is where others can be there for you, where you can experience the ministry, the loving voices and hands of other people. So don't be ashamed if you've reached that place of just like, I can't do this anymore. It's actually leading you to a place where you can be redeemed, rescued, and loved in that place of discomfort, sadness, frustration. And that's what then the next step is, which is this whole concept of baptism.
Yeah. Let's share that verse, the 2 Timothy.
Right. This was a verse that came to me when we were thinking about this breaking. It's in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. It says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and of a sound mind." God has given us this ability to overcome our difficulties with his power, with his love, and with the disciplined mind that he has given us. And so we really made a commitment that when we did this live broadcast with everyone tonight was to make sure we gave you scripture, make sure we gave you something solid to stand on. So know that God has given you that ability.
And really, we actually talked about this a little bit last weekend. Fear is something that can be good, but also can be from the enemy. And so we've got to have this filter that's, what's going on with me? Is this love, power, and a sound mind, or is this fear? And to be able to kind of understand, is this from the Lord, or is this from the enemy, or is this just my own thinking? So I want to encourage you with that. I had my breaking point just before Easter. Perfect timing. Like, first of all, Easter is like the best Sunday ever, you know? Like, it's just the pinnacle of what we believe, and we celebrate together, and it's so fun to be together on that day and to preach, and I love it. Of course, we love it.
Yeah.
And here I am 3 days before Easter, and I mean, I was at the dinner table with my family. It's supposed to be a sweet time, of course, with my kids and my wife. And I'm just like, I got nothing. I have no emotion, no thoughts, no nothing. And shared that with Pastor Chris. Vulnerability. I had, of course, Carissa was in on that with me. And it led all the way up to Saturday night before Easter when I was going to preach, online. And finally, I just had to have Carissa pray for me for even just the message on Sunday, because I was just, that was my breaking point. And I didn't really realize it because I hadn't gone through this. And I just went, I got nothing. So the next week I took 3 days off, just kind of slept, hung out, played, and it really bounced back up. But I needed our team to be able to know that, hey, I got to step out for a few, and that was it. So, All right, so here we go. Hey, text your questions in or throw them on Facebook, whatever works. Make sure that we get them in because we'll love to talk about them. Anything, don't worry about, this might be weird or funny or strange or different. Just throw them out there. It'll give us something to dialogue about. And if not, then we'll just kind of close out as we do. So baptism stage is the third stage. So we talked about building, we talked about breaking, and now there's this point of baptism. This is a going under. Breaking, you get to a breaking point where you're just in this wrestling match, and then you're wrestling, and then this baptism is surrender.
Right.
It's you're a wrestler. Like there were probably some moments, you don't have to be too vulnerable with us, but there was probably a moment where some bigger guy pinned you to the mat and you just went, right. I give up, I give in. This baptism is a dark and heavy stage where surrender takes place. Its baptism is dying of the old way, the old wineskins. It's allowing. This is what I would say. It's like, no, I'm going to hold on. I'm going to make things happen. I'm going to keep doing good. I'm going to keep doing these things. And you have this wrestling match like Jacob did with the Lord, and the Lord touched his hip, and boop, there was a breaking. And there was a release. There was a surrender. And this is the place where I would encourage you, let the breaking happen. And then, like in a swimming pool, lean back and float.
Right.
Just be. I call it the nothing stage. You can't do anything. In fact, it's not on you. It's not on me to do anything. But it's this willingness to release, to let go, to let it be what it is. And then the Lord will do a deep work within. But you kind of got to be vulnerable and willing to just, all right, here it is. Here it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's that surrender of giving up things. You kind of hold on to things in such a way that you justify holding on to them. Because it's the right thing to do or it's responsible. There could be a point where the Lord is saying, you need to surrender all the what ifs. What's going to happen to your job? What's going to happen to your finances? Will things ever go back to normal? Those are the things that plague us. But when you say, Lord, I trust you, I let it go. Because you've taken care of me up to this point, I trust you to take me the rest of the way. Many of you know my wife, Natasha's in Russia. And we've been waiting for her visa. Yeah. Well, because of this COVID-19 virus, all visas were put on the shelf except for emergency visas. And then, that hurt. Yeah. And then now all immigration has been paused. And so here, Natasha and I have been just hoping, trusting. And we both, just the other day, literally did what you're talking about. We broke under it, we wept together, and we surrendered. But out of that came a peace and even a joy, believe it or not. And we put our hope in him. Yeah,
and it's in these profound moments that you can have with the Lord that are pure and that are just you and him. And when that happens, there is just this sense of peace, of understanding my life is just a fleeting vapor, and I can allow him to just be my presence and be my all and do the things that he needs to do in the midst of this.
Right.
So it's similar to Moses when Moses kept on pushing back to the Lord, I think, and pushing back, all these reasons why he shouldn't lead, and what if they, and the Lord finally said, but I'm with you. And every time he kept on, I'm with you. He didn't even answer him. He said, I'm with you. Yeah. And so let these moments be that the Lord would just really reveal himself to you.
Yeah.
And even just take some time in the mornings. It is so beautiful out right now. I mean, the mornings, I love my quiet mornings. Take a walk around your block or just open the windows or sit on your porch and just be. Just be with the Lord. You don't have to
right.
read your Bible. You don't have to pray. You don't have to do anything, but just be. And I think you'd find that to be really profound. It's actually very, very counterintuitive for
It is.
me.
Well, yeah, if you're
Because
a
we
doer and
want,
task-oriented, yeah, you
and
bet.
that's why this is the nothing stage. So it's a stage of surrender. It's grieving. It's allowing. It's okay. It's really okay to be sad. It's okay to be emotional. It's okay to have challenges. It's okay to be frustrated, and it's okay. But if we're surrendering, we go, okay, Lord, I just am.
Yep.
I'm giving them all to you. I'm really casting all my cares on you.
That's right.
Because I trust you. I'm surrendering to you. So and then wait it out. I think that's my last point on this is don't run from it. I feel like we're so quick to avoid pain and challenges. Sometimes we gotta wait it out. The Israelites were in a moment like that where they were literally running from the enemy, the Egyptians who wanted to come destroy them and take them back into captivity. And between them and also the Red Sea, which is massive and huge. And what were they? All of them weren't thinking that they were literally going to cross through it.
Right.
Of course, they didn't know the miracle was on the other side of this. But what did the Lord do? He covered them both back and front, and that's the surrender right there. That's the waiting. That's where the Lord says, "Wait and see my salvation," in that same passage. And it's hard, it's challenging, it's stressful, but I should, and it's no, him. No,
right,
him.
right.
Turn your eye into him for a minute.
That's
And
right.
so yeah. So again, send in your questions because we want to really dialogue about this. We're going to wrap up the fourth stage and that'll give us perfect amount of time, 15, 20 minutes maybe to dialogue about some questions. So send them in. And again, the text number is 487-4330. So if that's not on the screen, 487-4330. Let's get those in. And let me see if there's anything else that... the passage. Of course, the passage.
The passage,
We're trying to, keep this biblical. I kept on thinking of Psalm 23 this whole time. And I didn't want to read this whole thing. I mean, it's only 6 verses, but
Still.
I want to read it with you. And would you just listen to these words? It says this. Okay, the Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing is what I underlined. All the underlined ones is just really important. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, and this is the baptism, this is the going under, this is the seed going into the ground to die and give its life so that it might produce fruit, right? It's even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil. Why? For you are with me.
That's right.
You are my rod and my staff. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemy. So in the presence of fear, in the presence of anxiety, I'm preaching now. It's like
preaching.
in the presence of all of these challenges, the Lord is the one who sets the table, dines with you while the enemy is present. And I just think of that picture of me eating with the Lord, this incredible meal that he's prepared for me and we're eating together. And I am so comfortable. I'm so comforted by his presence that I know that even though my enemy, that fear and anxiety, I know they can linger and they can be around, and I know I need to cast them out, and just rebuke it and do all that. The Lord sets a table before me. Let's keep going. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Hey, would you, maybe that's what you do in the mornings, before your kids get up. Great secret here. You can get an hour, maybe just squeeze it in. I don't know, half hour to 5 minutes. I don't know what you need, but just get out there, read over that passage. We could send these notes to everybody. I could get it out there easily. If you want them, request them. We'll get them to you. But read this passage. Reflect on what the Lord is doing and what you're not doing.
Right.
And just rest in that. So, Okay, sorry, let's go to the budding stage.
Well, and that's a great passage to transition into the budding stage, because just reading Psalm 23 like that, I'm listening to it. I know that psalm,
Yeah.
but in listening to it, it enlivens you. It restores your hope because there's a promise attached to it that God says, I'll never leave you or forsake you. I'll always be with you all the days of your life. And that's what happens to us as humans, and especially as believers, as Christians. We know that God is sovereign and that hope springs eternal even in the midst of the darkness, because attached to that hope is a promise, and the promise is his presence. His presence was with the Israelites when they wandered for 40 years. His presence was with Jesus when he was being tempted in the desert for 40 days. And he's with us right now. And so this last phase, which we've attached to the season of spring, is this budding. And I've seen it, and I'm seeing it happen right now. That's the other thing, too, is that I'm seeing a lot of you that even though you get bad news all the time, whether you click on a link on the internet or are you listening to a radio or whatever it is.
My phrase right now is, there's so much bad news, there's so much fake news. Let's go to the good news. Goodness, good news, Jesus, come on.
Exactly. And that's where something inside of you pushes past the kind of doomsday, apocalyptic, hunker down, hide in your basement. And it's amazing to watch my neighbors starting to poke their heads out more recently this last week and engage with conversation. And I realize that every state in the union is handling this different, but we're not governed ultimately by our governor and or by the president. We're citizens of heaven.
Yeah.
And the King of the universe is the one that breathes hope into us. And so this last stage is where you begin to get new ideas. You begin to think of ways to activate your faith.
Yeah.
Release your faith, and innovation begins to take place. And all of a sudden you find yourself getting these amazing ideas. So listen, church, we're talking to you. This is where ideas are going to start to pop in your head, because you're like, hey, I'm not going to stay in winter forever.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. My breaking point, I told you this. My breaking point was I was just I was a walking zombie almost. But what I realized, I think the Lord really highlighted this for me. This was maybe the breaking into the baptism of the Lord speaking life into the rough situation. And again, that was about a 2-3 day process that I went through. I don't know how long these go. And some of us, of course, have really difficult seasons. I'm not comparing mine to yours. It's just allowing the Lord to do a work. But what I realized was when I hit that breaking in that baptism phase, I lost all creativity. Like I like to think that I'm more creative. I think outside the box, and I just lost every ounce of creativity, and maybe even some joy, because I'm pretty bubbly and joyful most of the time, and I was just like, whoa. And so again, this is that budding phases where I began to like peek my head out and go, oh, hey, Pastor Chris, I got an idea. Let's do a Facebook Live and let's do this and let's get participation. Let's get some questions. By the way, send your questions in. Let's do something different, because people are sick and tired of being watchers, and we want to participate with you. And I'm seeing some questions already. So keep them coming.
Right. Because here's the thing, is that people need hope. And sometimes you have an idea that could even make that hope more real. This is a personal story with my kids. So, of course, my children are adults, but I said, hey, I know it's rough. They're unemployed because they're in the food service industry and their restaurants aren't open. I said, what could I do for you? Do you need money? Do you need this? My daughter said to me, she goes, Dad, would you make us your famous, they call them daddy tacos? Because I used to make, I'm being Mexican, I grew up eating tacos, making tacos. Well, I have a special way that I make tacos. And I mean, when was the last time I did that? But I said, of course I can do that for you. So tomorrow I'm going to make them. But it's that thing where people begin to say, would you do this? Because it gives me a feeling of hope. It gives me a feeling of love. And so one of the things that in this stage of budding, go with that sense of energy and hope. But Julie did put down some... Jesse, I'm sorry. Jesse did put down some little guidelines.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
first
that's
of all,
true.
don't break the law. Okay. So you think, well, I've got this. I'm just going to go hug all my children. I don't care what the shelter-in-place rules are. It's like, well, I don't know about that. So we're not advocating anybody break the law or just go around without washing your hands. You should wash your hands all the time anyway. But there's this idea of sometimes we get so inspired that we go, I'm just going to do it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And too often we take that as, well, I'm going to do it because God said it. And
Yeah,
it's like, whoa,
you see, okay, yes.
Pull back the
Believers,
reins.
don't do that. Please don't do that. Don't do the God told me I could,
There is a point of coming out of this. It's coming out of that breaking into the baptism. It's like, don't rush it because the Lord has done a deep work and us Americans for sure are so good at just next thing. And I'm one of the leaders of that, where I'm like, okay, great, I accomplished a goal. Okay, keep going. No, what's next? And pull back the reins, connect with one another, let creativity shine, and do the things that the Lord is really leading you to, but have wisdom
Right.
with it all.
Right.
Yeah.
What ways can you stir up your microchurch, your family, your life group? Go for it. And again, here's the thing. If you have the idea, that means you get to initiate it. And if Pastor Jeff and I, sometimes people say, hey, you guys, what we need to have at our church? We need to have this ministry. We go, great. Why don't you write it down and let us know when you're going to start that? And people go, wait, no, it was just an idea. But in some ways, if you're going to make a suggestion, go for it. Don't feel like somebody else has to do it. And again, but be wise about it. Be safe about it. And, be a good steward of it as well.
Yeah, and again, too, I think part of that is we talked about, you've taken this time to realign your values. Ideally, we would say, hey, the Lord and your relationship with Jesus is primo, top-notch, number one, because all else, in fact, just a little preaching moment, the word priorities used to never exist. It never used to be plural. It was actually just priority. And it was the Lord was priority. So I want to encourage you that your relationship with the Lord, if that's in place, everything else will flow. Right. Everything else will flow. It doesn't mean we don't have bumps in the road, but don't run out of this so quickly. We're like, the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm gonna go. Yeah. Whoa, freedom. We're all going to the beaches, right? It's taking what we've just. Take this as a real learning experience and man, this work that the Lord's done in us, and go, now I'm taking this with me in my new normal, and I'm going to stop doing a lot of the things that I thought were high priority, but actually should have been way further down. I'm obviously going to spend a lot more time with my family because, wow, that's been so fun. Yeah. I'm going to work from home a lot more. Yeah. I'm going to allow our team to work from home a lot more. It's like, why wouldn't we? We want to be together. We will, but we'll also make those priorities, which I think are really important. So, yeah.
Right, and I think that just the last point that I want to make in this, you guys, is that what's so cool is that we are a community. We're a family. Someone is the hand, someone is the leg, someone is the eye, and Life Church is going to get through this, but not so much the walls and the ceiling. Life Church, that means us.
Yeah.
And your budding, innovative, creative spirit is going to help keep this church going. And we're not going to go back to a lot of things that we used to do, and the world in general is going to change. But I don't want to feel like we're being drugged to the future. I want to feel like we're being lifted to a place in the future. And it's springtime, and I already sense it. I already sense people like baking bread for each other. And somebody dropped off 3 loaves of bread at my house the other day, and I was like,
I mean, we didn't even get one of them.
Yeah.
Who is that? And maybe we'll talk afterward, but.
Oh, that's right. You want some bread?
Well, we didn't even get any. I got a family of 6.
But my point is that I said to the person, I had no idea that you ever baked bread. And he said, well, basically I just started, type of a thing. Yeah. And so what is God starting to percolate in you? What are the things that you're beginning to not want to hold back any longer. You're feeling the sense of surge, and I'm not going to be completely absorbed and consumed by doubt
Yeah.
and fear.
Yeah.
And because as you go, so will go the church.
Yeah. Which builds off one of my sermons before all this was where God goes, I go.
Mm-hmm.
Where God goes, I go. And there can be this momentum where, man, I'm going to follow after the Lord now. I mean, man, I'm going to follow after the Lord. When we can be out, I mean, we're going to take advantage of being together. I love what Pastor Anthony said in an interview this last weekend. We shared that. But he said, I had people telling me we've just taken advantage of the church and the connection. and it's like, we realize how valuable our community and relationship is. And so, man, come on, let's go. Let's be together as the Lord leads us and see how profound and powerful, what an impact we can have together with one another, of course, but really for our whole community. So pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited about what's going to happen. And the idea about going somewhere is that we're going together. I really want to emphasize that, you guys. We need each other now more than ever, even though we've had to isolate in our homes. Boy, I need my brothers and my sisters more than I've ever needed them in my life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the scripture, here's the scripture.
Yep.
Jeremiah 29, verse 11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future." Mm-hmm. God has those plans for us.
Interesting. That passage is unique because that's when they were going into captivity.
Right?
And yet the Lord is saying, hey, allow this to happen. Allow this breaking, this baptism, and goodness, there's going to be a future and a hope for all of us through this. So let's look to the light. Jesus is the light. And let's see it at the end of this. So, hey, we got a lot of questions.
Oh, good.
All right. So there's those 4 phases, those stages. I saw a question on here. It was, can we make this PowerPoint available? Yes, we can do that. If you're on Life Church email, we can email it out to you guys. If not, then please send us your info. We'll get it to you, and we'll make that available. Okay, so here's the deal. Number 1 says, and I got questions coming from different spots, so hang tight with us. Hopefully we can try and get through this. Number 1 is, what's the difference between breaking and the breaking baptism phase and depression? The breaking baptism and depression, is that part of it? That's a great question.
Yeah.
I'll let you answer that.
Well, but I think in some ways it kind of answers itself. In that, I would say this, and I know you would too. Are you feeling depressed? And if a person says, yes, I just feel really depressed. Mm-hmm. And then say, yeah, then you're probably in that stage. You're being broken. And to be depressed, obviously, is sometimes we over-stereotyped into be something very just morbid or like it's bad. Oh, you shouldn't be depressed, or it will lead to something else. No, that's the part of vulnerability where you say, you know how bad it is? I really have a hard time getting out of bed. Yeah. I really have a hard time just even doing anything. I haven't washed dishes for forever, whatever. Right. People are actually afraid to say that out loud. Yeah. And what we're saying is say it out loud, because that's the way you get through the valley of the shadow of death.
You need some people around you to say that vulnerability. And the picture that I have with that is it's like we've been riding bikes a lot, so we've had a few flat tires. And, I take the tube out of the tire and I pump it up to find out where that little hole is. And in a way, this is general, of course, so please bear with me. But in a way, depression is it's still a tube. It's just got a tiny, like itsy bitsy hole that's causing this deflation. It's depressing. It's pulling all the air out. It's pulling all the energy out. And I would say in this season, you just go, Lord, help me find that little hole. Mm-hmm. And the healer, the great physician, can patch that up, pump you back up, put you back in the tire, and you're ready to roll. Yeah. And so it's a work of the Lord that's needed in that area for sure, I think. There could be other things, but this is where I'd say invite the Lord in on that process and others.
Right. Invite us in on that process. Yeah. You guys fill out those prayer request cards, and we are big advocates of counseling, and therapy, and maybe some of you have been doing really, really well in your life, and going into this isolation, this shelter in place, has triggered some things inside of you, and you've found yourself just spiraling. Ask for help. If Pastor Jeff and I can't help, we can find people that can, but don't go through this alone.
This next question, actually, I think it kind of goes hand in hand with this one. It says, how can we find hope when we're feeling super depressed and so much anxiety?
Right.
So wow, it's a hard moment when you feel like you're in a cave with no light. Yeah. And so I don't know how you would want to answer this, Pastor Chris, but it's I think there's the willingness to reach out and invite somebody, help me see the light. We had a great conversation with somebody earlier this week that they were just like, I don't even know what to pray anymore. I don't even know if I have the energy to. That's where we collectively come in and intercede for you. That's what prayer is for. That's what intercession is for. That we stand in the gap for you. So you don't feel like you have to do anything. Again, not you, him. Right. So it's okay where you're at, but invite the Lord into the process and others in to help you through that.
Right, and the way I look at it too is choosing to believe the truth than the lie or the circumstances. The valley of the shadow of death is a great illustration to that. If you started off on top of a hill and I pointed to you and you see Mount Lassen, you could say, oh yeah, I can see Mount Lassen. I said, okay, we're going to hike there. And we began to hike, but then we went down into a valley. And in the valley, because you're in a valley, you can no longer see Mount Lassen. And that's what happens sometimes in that depression, according to this question. That's really what's happened. You're in such a low place and you can't see it. You can't see your point of destination anymore. You can't see the hope of the mountaintop. All you can see is the forest or just the dark valley. That's where you let others help state the truth to you. What is true is that mountain still is there. I know you can't see it. And that's where you really let others help you through those very difficult times. So it's not necessarily, there isn't anything wrong with you just because you can't see the hope or anything hopeful. It's still there. It's just been blocked out because of the circumstances. But that's where you have to let the Lord primarily and then others literally help carry you through those times.
And there are others who have trekked that pass as well.
Right, great point.
So there's others who have gone before you in those areas, and they know. They've been on the other side. And so it's helpful to find people who are a little further ahead in the journey. That's one thing I so appreciate about our relationship is I glean so much from a Pastor Chris, just in how to lead a congregation or how to do one-on-one stuff. And man, oh man. So to have somebody to come alongside you who's been a little further down the road, it's an amazing thing.
Right.
So, okay, so what does breaking look like, and what are some examples? I shared mine. I just was kind of like a walking zombie, and I didn't throw this massive temper tantrum. I'm not a yeller, so or I don't scream or yell unless somebody's breaking into my car, and then I get out of here. Some of you know that story.
Some of you know that. That's one of my favorite Pastor Jeff stories.
But here's the deal. Jessie actually shared a story about how her and her husband, they went to the grocery store and they had their masks on like everybody does, and she saw a bunch of pineapples, and so she was really excited about it, but they didn't want to take their mask off to smell it to see if it was ripe. So they just picked one they thought would work, and they took it home, and right away her husband was already cutting it up, and through all the stress and anxiety that was already put on her, she just like went to the couch and started crying. Like, nothing's working. Nothing's happening right. Everything's, and so she recognized, hey, that was my breaking point. It was over pineapple. So it can be the smallest things. I would say, like I talk to my kids this way, and I think I recognize this with every age group. Every age group has a temper tantrum.
Yeah.
For adults, it's fine. I'm just not going to go. I'm not going to do it anymore. And it's like, okay, you little baby, like, but there's these moments where you just kind of start resisting, or you break down. It might be just crying. It might just be anger. It might just be this lashing out, whatever it might be. So I don't know if you have any other.
No, I was just thinking of a passage. I'm going to look it up. Hope deferred makes the heart sick.
Yeah.
and I'll look it up and then send it out. But the other form of breaking is when something that you really needed to be in control or orderly becomes chaotic, and you lose your grip, you lose your ability to control the situation.
Yeah.
And that's me. When I can't,
That's really good.
when I feel like, okay, I can deal with chaos one day, okay, maybe 2 days. But when I feel like there is no guarantee
Yeah.
that things are going to be normal or I'm going to do it the way I want to do it, there is something in me that after a while I just snap.
Yeah. Yeah. Control and fear are cousins. They're more like brother and sister. Control and fear just play hand in hand together. So I'm going to control everything. So it's in my wheelhouse. So I know what's going to happen. I know what to expect. I know all of these things. And as soon as you start losing all these freedoms that we've had, you're losing control and you're losing the ability to make choice for your own self. And it'd be interesting to see how your heart rate spikes in those situations. And after so many times, all of a sudden, you're right. You have this kind of this breaking point, which is what we just covered. So,
Right.
So I hope that was helpful to that answer. If you have more questions, bring them in. It's 8:01. We're going to keep going with the rest of these. If you drop off by now, I love you guys. But here's the deal. We'll keep going. So number 4 says, can you bypass these stages or avoid them?
The bridge.
How do we embrace the process? Okay, let me just say this, because that was kind of my joke with Jessie, actually, because we were checking in and she was part of this Zoom that I was on, and I said, can I just build a bridge, right? Can I just build a bridge and bypass the breaking and the baptism, and it really is just a matter of what do you want the Lord to do, and whether we like it or not, and most likely we don't. Nobody likes change. Well, I do.
Yes.
Let me just say it this way. I want the Lord to do whatever he needs to do in my life. That's plain and simple. I am going, here's my life, Lord. Whatever you need to do, break away the callus, break away the calcium, break my heart for what breaks yours. Let it be that I would weep for the things that you weep for. And sometimes that you need some attention, some wake up calls, oh my goodness, I was going this way, but the Lord is trying to wave me down over here. So yeah, you could easily, we've been bypassing
Right.
this. And I think this is a way for the Lord saying, hello, hi, hey, over here. There was that whole, I don't know who wrote this up, but it was like, there's no more celebrities, there's no more movies, there's no more money, there's no more jobs, there's nothing else. Well, there's plenty other idols, but those are a lot of idols that we've been worshiping along the way, spending so much time and money on, gone. Hello, the Lord's like, hello, I'm right here, I want to do work in your life. So yes, you could bypass them. But my question back to you is, why would you?
Yeah.
Why would you? Why would you?
Well, you want it to have its perfect work in you. You want, I don't want things to last as long as they do sometimes, but at the same time, I need to go through it the right amount of time so that it has its perfect effect in my life.
Yeah.
Or the butterfly. If you find a butterfly breaking out of its cocoon and you help it, and which I did when I was a kid, and my mom found out, she was like, "Don't you realize what you've done? Now this butterfly will not be able to fly, because in order to fly, it has to break through. It has to exercise its wings." Of course, I felt guilty as a kid for years after that. But the point is that sometimes things just have to have a certain time period to it. And I think that also with these phases, some people won't go through them as intently because of their temperament, their personality, just as where they are with their lives. But associated with this is to remember how God made you. If you're an introvert, extrovert, a task-doing person, a people-oriented person, and Pastor Jeff takes everyone through these spiritual gifts tests when you go through our life tracks. And so just remember that, those things that you scored really high in, that'll kind of guide you through the phases themselves.
Yeah, that's a great point. So good. So it says, how do we embrace the process invite the Lord to lead you through it. He's going to highlight these things. If you're not going to bypass them, you're inviting the Lord to just do what he needs to do, then your eyes and your ears are going to be open. I would say a part of the process of embracing would be inviting others to speak into your life and bring wisdom in, bring counsel in, bring the word of God in. Right now, I would say embracing the process for me a lot looks like in the morning when I'm reading my scripture, I'm just going, it is 3D. It is just coming at me, all these truths and promises of God. And that's part of embracing the process of like, man, I'm going to dig into the meat of what God's doing here because, geez, this is what he's doing in me right now. And it's not so much for our church or even, well, because I'm allowing the Lord to do it, it's gonna bleed into the church and my family.
Right.
But it's really for me at this moment, right now. So that's how I would encourage you to do that. Okay, another question says, does the church have any resources to help with the budding phase? We're just getting into this budding phase. And so what I would say is just, I would say right now we're starting to tweak and think, how do we change and adjust to be helpful to everybody? So that's the gear in which we're thinking about. So even this weekend, come to service, show up in your micro church at home, in your PJs, whatever you need to do. But we're going to talk about the CARE acronym that Pastor Matt Lacey gave us last week. We're going to break that out, and there will be some practical things in there. And so, so tune in this weekend, and we'll have some more available to you. Resource-wise, though, I think you're gonna see here is it's not so much for like everybody. Like this is what everybody needs to do. It's gonna be this is the Lord walking you through it, giving you vision, giving you a eyesight for your own life, for your next steps. And so, I would probably put that budding phase more in a personal reflection versus a collaborative. Everybody takes these steps together.
Right. Right. I think, and you coined the phrase, Pastor Jeff said, he goes, I think people are just not zoned out, but zoomed out. And I think that we get to that place where we're like, yeah, but I need to do something. And that's that budding and phase. And we're aware of that. In fact, we talk a lot about how we're going to put the boots back on the ground, if you will. Yeah. How are we going to, once this thing really starts to lift, the after effect of lost business, lost jobs, all those different things. We are thinking proactively, and we're going to not just do the two of us. Yeah. We're going to be pulling people in and hopefully putting together packets of information that will, after we've assessed what has been the overall effect of this, so we as a church can move forward and be proactive.
Absolutely. And I mean, the very first phase that we're going to be able to do is, gatherings of 10 people or less. And so maybe it's up to you. One of the things that I want to do is we already invited our neighbors. Hey, after this, let's have dinner together. Would you come on over to our house? 3 years, we haven't had them over for dinner, and that's silly. And so we invited them, and they were excited to, absolutely, we'll come over. So that's one small practical thing. And so, just go from there. But be paying attention. Maybe think of creative ways to how can you engage with other people as we're able to do that. Okay. Right. Last question. Last question of the night. It's a good one. It's a really good one. Well done. Great question. It says, can the government affect our budding phase? Talk about our response to government overreach. Talk about what our response to government overreach should be.
That'd be great. Why don't you answer that, Pastor Jeff?
Way to put us on the spot. Thanks a lot.
That's a good question. I like it.
Yeah. So, okay. I love this quote from Martin Luther. The 95 Theses, Martin Luther, and it was during the bubonic plague, and he basically said he wrote an open letter to pastors, to churches. He's kind of, I think of Ed Stetzer, he's helping all these churches trying to figure out what are the next steps you need to do and think about. But here's the deal. What he said was, look, I'm going to do everything that I need to do to avoid getting sick. I'm going to take care of my home. I'm going to do the things that I need to do to stay safe and healthy. But if my neighbor is in need, you bet I'm going to go to my neighbor who's in need.
Right.
Whew. It's pretty profound. And so, okay, the government is going to say one thing, and we want to be honoring and respectful and follow that. Romans 13, it's very clear on that. It's like, look, we're gonna pray for our leaders. We're gonna be obedient to those things. And look, the Lord's gonna honor that. I want to just go do whatever I want to do. That's the flesh. That's our flesh. So again, if we allow this breaking and baptism season to occur, then I'm going to say, Lord, I want to, but I want what you want more.
Right.
So I'm going to let my spirit battle the flesh to submission. And sometimes that means, you know what? I'm going to just wait upon the Lord. The government's saying one thing, and I might not be exactly happy about it. In fact, I might be outraged by it. I might just be like, no, it's about my civil rights. Well, no, okay.
Yeah.
I get it. But at the same time, the Lord is the one leading you, citizen of heaven here on earth. I want to bring the kingdom of God here. I want to be a peacemaker.
Right.
And I want to be able to lead in a way that people will want to follow. And if I'm just out there, no, I'm going against the man, that's going to be dangerous. And so, there always could be a point where there's a tension where you're going to have to decide, okay, you know what, my biblical belief.
There you go.
The word of the Lord is being crushed, silenced, whatever. Look at China. They have a bunch of underground churches. They're not allowed to.
Right.
It's against the law. So, but man, we're not going to stop being Christians.
Right.
I'm not going to stop following Jesus. Nobody's going to say that.
Right.
So I'll get arrested before somebody says I can't be a Christian and follow after Jesus. So we're not there yet by any stretch of the imagination. So I don't know.
Right. No, but I think that when the government asks us to violate our values, then that's where you make a stand. And I think the book of Daniel, our men's group has been reading the book of Daniel.
So good.
And folks, I'm encouraging you, go back, reread Daniel at least a couple of times because their posture, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and Daniel, they stood their ground, but they did it with discretion and wisdom, and they never retaliated. They just said, look, this is what God told us to do. We're not going to eat your food. Just give us different food. And if we look any different than you guys in 10 days, then you can do whatever you want with us, but we're not going to eat your food. And of course, God vindicated them 10 days later. They looked healthier than everybody else. And so that is a way that you can make your stand, but you do it with a sense of honor and dignity and decorum. But then the other thing, too, is that each person, we can't tell you what to do. Each person is going to have to live with their own conscience. And I realize that for some of you, and they've complained to us saying, the government doesn't have any right to do this. And I said, well, then you're going to have to act your conscience out, but you have to do it lawfully, legally, godly. Remember, you're a reflection of who Jesus is. So you really have to think it through before you post something on Facebook and just, vent on Facebook.
I got an idea. Why don't you just stay off Facebook?
No, then they wouldn't be watching us right now.
Oh, that's true. I mean, goodness, it's such a challenge.
Yes.
Wow, that's a great question. We're out of questions. Somebody did write in. My adult child and I had a conversation this afternoon. Both of us came to the realization that this challenging time is exactly what we needed to reset our lives.
Wow.
And I love that because I heard that word reset really often, especially the first couple of weeks. And that's maybe reprioritizing our values. It's just this reset. It's like, what's important? And I love that. I appreciate that so much. And so yeah, it's a reset. So maybe the question for you as you go to bed tonight, as you chat with your spouse or your loved ones, if we were to go back to normal tomorrow, how would we live differently? Mm-hmm. How would we maintain this reset life? How would we live it differently?
Yeah.
In video games, it's called respawning.
That's right. Yeah, you respawn.
Right when you I don't know. I can't believe I know this. But
I'm impressed.
When you die in a video game, some active shooter game, I don't know, whatever, you die, you get to a lot of times you start back where you died, or you go back to a place before, but you already know what's ahead of you.
Yeah.
And in a way, you're anticipating, and that reset is going, okay, now this is the best chance to redo and rework how I've been living.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about that. I'm excited for everybody. I think it's a great time for our church, the church in general,
Yeah.
for that reset and to come back with some, hey, we're going to do things a little differently, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So I love it. So
Yeah, I do.
Man, thank you,
And
Pastor
we,
Chris.
we love this, you guys. If you didn't get your question answered tonight or you didn't get it fully answered, just email us. Chris at lifechurchego.org, Jeff at lifechurchchico.org. I love answering questions,
absolutely.
and that's how we stay in community.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, so before you run off, Sunday we have services at 9, and we change it from at 9 and 11. So we change that up, 9 and 11. So invite your friends, family, share the love, share the feed, all that stuff. And we're going to be bringing a different look again this weekend, and I'm really excited. We get to dialogue more, and we want to be able to make it interactive more and more. So we love you guys. I hope this was helpful. Please reach out and let us know. You can go on our website and or Facebook, whatever works for you to connect with us. So love you guys. Love you, Pastor Chris. Thank you
Love
for
you.
everything.
Okay.
And
High five.
boom, done. Peace out.
Blessings.
Love you guys. See you later.